How you doing, Jesus?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. You want a quick introduction for the podcast?
Sure. Just like,
Yeah, just tell us who you are.
man, yeah. My name is Tobias. I'm an emergency room nurse. I work in Nac Memorial, the county hospital here at Nac. I've been doing it since like 2017. I was born in Mexico. Came to Nac in 2009. For SFA, I was ready to leave at first, and then I truly fell in love with the town, fell in love with a girl,
Well, that'll keep you here.
and I'm here.
I've been hearing a lot of people they moved to Nac, where it's like, oh, what's this middle of the nowhere place, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, I'm gonna stay here.
It truly, it'll captivate you for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you end up at Mosaic?
I was pre-split. So when I came to school,
So you were part of Grace,
so I was part of Grace.
which
Yeah.
Nac or Mosaic split off from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when I came to school, I was Catholic, and my buddy from Jack Camp, first day of school, he was like, first Sunday before school, was like, hey, come to church with me, and I was like, man, I'm Catholic, and he was like, so just come to Grace. I heard good things about it, and I'm like, man, I'm Catholic. I'm supposed to go to a Catholic church, and he was like, bro, it'll be fine. I'm like, the nuns are gonna find out, and they're gonna come after me, bro. I can't do that. And he said, just don't be stupid, just come. So I went, and that was pretty life changing, I would say. I went in, and I never went back.
Yeah. How's that growing up Catholic? I hear a lot of stories. I grew up non-denominational, but I know a lot of people. The saying was Catholics make good converts. Because we're too hard on Catholics around here on this podcast. But they don't know their Bible as well. So what I've been told by prior Catholics is they started reading their Bible and they're like, yo, you lied to me. You lied to me. Like, this isn't in there. This isn't in there. Or this is in there. Yeah. Do you have anything to say to that?
Man, there's, it was very religious, I would say, growing up.
Define religious.
Like, church was some place that you went. You sang like older songs, and there's set prayers, set things you say. You stand, you sit, you stand, you sit, you kneel. So it's very much, I would say, I don't know if I have the right word for it.
Legalistical?
Legalistical.
Legalistic.
Yeah, and ritualistic, I guess maybe that is also another word. So I think that was the biggest thing for me is when I went to Grace, like a non-denominational church, and there was like contemporary worship, but not that Catholics do also listen to some contemporary worships, but especially where I grew up, it was like very different. People were relaxed. Like, I always felt like going to mass, like I had to be stiff. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't really show emotion. And the reality is I was never taught to or told to read my Bible. Yeah, definitely not. I had one Bible growing up, and it was this really pretty ornate Bible that I got on my first communion, and it just sat on a shelf, and it was meant to be a decorative Bible. And I had great parents, but they never really told me hey, you need to read the Bible. So for sure.
The thing I've heard from Catholic parents is that you send your kids to Catholic school and to the church, and they teach them the proper things that they're supposed to follow, and so I've heard when the kids do go astray, I've heard from parents say, well, the church was supposed to take care of that.
I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I didn't see that. And my parents never, I guess, addressed why I strayed, but I could see that. Yeah, there was no spiritual teaching at home meant we would pray the rosary or pray together, but it was just not But then it was supposed to, yeah, you would go to Sunday school or catechism classes, and that's kind of where your religious upbringing was. I did go to private school in Mexico, so that also was where I would get my religious upbringing. So I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see
What part of Mexico?
Chihuahua.
Okay. That's further south?
It's actually on the border. So
I don't know the provinces
no,
of Mexico
you're
well.
good.
So
You're good. So it's the state of Chihuahua, and then the capital is Chihuahua as well, like the city. So it's kind of like Texas City and Texas, even though I know that's not our capital. But
maybe it should be.
maybe I don't know. I don't know if Texas City has a lot going on.
Mm.
But no, it's on the border. You know where El Paso, Texas is? So we're like across the border. We're the state
Gotcha.
that borders that.
Okay, so my geography was totally off.
You know,
A
I
million
don't blame
miles
you.
off. Yeah. I mean, we're Americans. Like, there's nothing outside of America. Maybe
exactly right.
Europe, Australia, a couple other things, but
Exactly. I mean, I don't blame you for knowing another country, not knowing another country.
I don't know.
But yeah, no, it's a border state, and then my city is like 2 hours south of the border.
And how old were you when you moved?
I was 13.
Okay. So I assume you moved with your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my dad got a job as a teacher. He had lost his job in Mexico. He used to work for a company, some kind of like manufacturing company. And the U.S. at that year needed bilingual teachers. So they offered like a year-long education process where they would go every weekend, take classes, and then at the end of the year, he would pass his education test, and then the program itself took care of like getting paperwork, getting us a work visa. Well, my dad a work visa and us like a green card, and then they would kind of set up the whole like get him a job. So that's how we moved to Houston.
Are you Will or Ben? Are you picking all that up? Bad upstairs.
No, it's not too bad.
Apparently, there's construction going on upstairs. This is the first time that's happened. So.
I did see this building was for sale. Right?
Oh yeah,
Or part of the building was for sale.
like a podcast studio.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So what? I mean, what was it like going from Mexico to here? Like, do you go back? Miss it?
Yes, and so yeah, at 13, I was going into 8th grade. It was pretty hard. Culture shock, I would say, was big. I did live in a border town, so my parents sent me to American school. But so I knew how to read and write English really well, and I could speak it kind of choppy, but like it was still a border town, so like most of my interaction was like with like fellow Mexican like people, so I didn't really like have a good grasp on how to speak it and understand it. So, but I had good grades and I could like read and write well, so I could test really well. So when I first moved, when you moved from Mexico, or I'm sure where you moved from any country, you had to do like English test, kind of see like how strong you are, and I tested really well out of ESL. So I immediately got put in just regular pre-AP, fancy smart people classes, but I mean I just tested well. So it's pretty hard because English took off pretty fast, and I was like, oh gosh, no say. So that was hard. It was hard. I mean, the reality of it, like encountering some racism and some like microaggression. For sure, I think that was hard, and it was honestly also big.
Like, how do you mean?
So like, people will make fun of my accent, or they would have me say bad things that I didn't realize that were bad things.
Gotcha. So just general bullying.
Yeah. So yeah, and then just like even like expectations. I like being told I didn't look like what they in their mind expected a Mexican to look like, and even culturally, like a Mexican American versus like a Mexican is different. So yeah, so that was hard to just you're in middle school, you just want to fit in. So I think
Yeah.
that was hard. I was like, I don't want to be the outsider. I don't want to be the new kid. I don't want to be the foreigner. I just wanted to fit in. And since I didn't get to go to start in ESL, it wasn't like I was with fellow like immigrants, foreigners. Like I was, yeah, I was just fully immersed, and it was like ready or not. So that was hard. And then it was also very like America's a lot more diverse than Mexico. Everybody in Mexico, especially when I was there, was Mexican, Catholic, and if you weren't that, you weren't there.
Yeah.
So coming in, like the reality of like I would walk in, I was like, oh, this is like the first Asian I've seen in person and not in Discovery Channel or on TV. And like, yeah, I mean, I knew Caucasians decently because again, we live in a border town, but even like I didn't have a lot of experience like meeting black people or meeting like, yeah, just like any kind of diversity was non-existent in Mexico. So that was also kind of like, whoa.
What was your takeaway from that? Like positive? I mean, like,
I mean, it was cool. I do love that. I love the diversity of this country. So it was pretty awesome, like getting to meet different cultures and like seeing like what their differences, but also their similarities. So that was like pretty awesome.
yeah, it's the melting pot.
Yeah, truly,
Yeah.
truly.
So still go back to Mexico?
Yes and no. My parents go a lot more than I did. I grew up, became an adult, and time off is not as readily available. So that makes it hard.
Family, kids.
But my parents do. I mean, all of our extended family's there. So they try to go back more often than we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they go twice a year usually. But I haven't been back probably in like 4 to 5 years, maybe more.
Okay. So what's your stance on like the current like political situation with the border and like because there's a lot of
That is spicy.
yeah.
Ah,
I mean, you've been on both sides.
yeah,
You're-
no, I gotcha. It's hard. I think no matter what side you stand on it, I think it's dicey. I might have a little more of a liberal,
That's
it's
fine.
quote unquote belief. Just I guess being on the other side. People always say, why don't they come the right way? The reality is like it's hard coming the right way. Like, people are like, why don't you just become a citizen? I just became a citizen last year, and it took a lot financially, and a lot. Like there are a lot of requirements that I'm like, if you don't have the money and you don't have like the resources, it's hard. Like it's hard to come about. So I'm like, it's harder than people think it is. So I do see both sides, of course. Like I do see like the issue with like illegal immigrants and like people coming in. I do find it ridiculous. People get all upset about taking their jobs because most of them are really not taking the jobs that they want. I don't see Becky Sue really trying to work in construction or trying to work
Yeah,
the jobs that she's so threatened by. There's plenty of nursing spots open, so if Becky Sue wants to come, I would love to work with her. So that I think I do find that a little ridiculous. That insecurity. But like I said, nonetheless, like I do, it's a reality, and of course, like you can talk about like the security or the safety issues, and I mean, there's bad people. Yeah, I get it. There is bad people in Mexico. There's bad people in any country. There's bad people in America.
of course.
I mean, it's hard because it's like, okay, not all the crime is also done by the illegal immigrants. So like I said, I do see both sides. I understand. I do think.
Well, and I know the process is hard. Like my aunt was Canadian, which is obviously the other way.
Yeah.
But like she was married to my uncle for 40 years before she became a citizen. I don't know the exact number, but like it was a long time, and it was a process to nationalize. Like it's not easy.
It truly is.
Like, what
not.
were some of the like requirements?
So our process was a little bit different because we went through work for my dad, but it took. So when we came in, my dad had this only work visa. We had green card. We were basically like visitors. They're allowed to stay, basically like a living green card. Um, then after that, I think it's 10 years. We were allowed to apply for our citizenship. We were allowed to apply for a work visa sooner, like my mom and I. So we were able to apply for Social Security and get a job.
Mm.
I started working pretty early on when I was like 16. And then 10 years after that, we are granted, you can apply for your permanent residency. Uh, and so that's pretty dandy. What, you would think, oh, I'm perfect, but it expires like every so often. So you have to be renewing. So you're paying all these fees as you're doing that. I still pay taxes.
Sure, of course.
Popular belief, and I didn't get I didn't have the right to vote. I had no say. So it's one of those where it's like I have to pay, but I also don't get a right or a say.
Taxation without representation.
Right? I was like, no, those are American beliefs and systems that we have. But, and then after you're a permanent resident for 10 years, then you can apply for your citizenship. And again, that also requires it's a pretty hefty fee. It's like above $1,000 because you have to involve a lawyer to do the paperwork. Because if you don't have a lawyer that knows how to do the paperwork, you can do it yourself, save yourself some money. But like if you mess it up, like they just scratch your application and you have to repay everything and stuff. So
Yeah.
and it's terrifying because even like as a permanent as a resident, like even though it sounds like it's a permanent thing, like you can still be deported at that point. So the government would choose and feel like. So there were some times in I think in our life, especially when we were like permanent residents, that I was afraid. I was like, man, somebody could come up to me and deport me and say you're not a citizen and take that away from me.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think like you said, it's just a messy thing, and I think we haven't gone it right. There's some things we've done.
I mean, so it's like if you could make the decisions, like do you know, like what's your opinion as to what should be done? How should the system work? Do we want to go there? We don't want to go there.
No, I just don't even know if I have a face. So like I said, I'm not out here being like, man, because I truly don't know. Like I do think also, I mean, it's a government agency, so for starters, it's like bureaucracy. Like it just takes forever to do anything and paperwork. So for sure, I would say like even how accessible it is, how like I understand we're like they don't want to let everybody in, but I'm like, man, some people are just legitimately trying to get make a better life, and I'm like, especially I'll get even extra spicy. I think as Christians, like pushing somebody or denying somebody or wanting to close off our borders, like I'm like, it just doesn't sound like Jesus to me. So it's one of those where I think like it's a fair. It's a hard thing. Like I said, I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
I
mean, yeah, it's definitely a complicated situation, and like you said, there's good and bad people on both sides of the line, and then government makes things messy. Bureaucracy makes everything inefficient and messy, and I think there's a better ways to use that money and allocate those resources.
100%.
Like, if you want to get a little spicy, maybe we should be doing more for Mexico than Ukraine.
I mean,
well, the
it
thing
is a
is too,
closer neighbor.
I firmly believe that so much of the damage that was done to Mexico was, the illegalization of drugs in America, because you basically it allowed the cartel to grow and a massive amount of damage to be done that is just sourced by the markets in America, and they can make it over there.
Yeah. See that.
But yeah. So what are your hobbies? What are you into?
Man, I'm a pretty simple man. I would say coffee is my biggest passion.
Did we do okay here?
No. But it's okay. It's not your fault.
What should we have done?
I see your number one mistake is your beans.
Okay.
no offense. I don't want to offend
I'm not
the
like,
big
hey,
corporate of.
it was the only light roast that I could find at Kroger, and since we're drinking it black, like
No, I do, and that you are doing it right. A light roast is always the way to go, and just I would say go local before you go
okay.
Dunkin'.
Oh no, we're not the Dunkin'. We're this white box.
Oh,
Here.
okay.
We're this thing right here. I didn't. Get
Oh,
Dunkin'.
we're happy. I got you. No,
Yeah.
and a
Not a
lighter
sponsor.
roast.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to sponsor,
Holla.
yeah. But that was the only light roast that I
Yeah,
could really
no,
find.
and that's
over.
it's fine. I am a kind of coffee snob, but
I am not. So I could use some schooling.
for sure, I mean, I would say light roast always. I said go local, so we have Java Jacks and stuff, and I understand it's a little pricier to buy beans there
That
for
was
some
$15.
people. You know, and
I don't think Java Jacks could be much more expensive.
No,
No.
that's not. So I would say that's the biggest thing, and then of course, I mean, if you're really diving into it, it's the way you brew your coffee.
Okay.
A drip machine is fine, but if you want like good coffee, I always say a French press is a gateway to snobby coffee.
Okay.
It's simple, and you can make a good quality coffee without like a lot of hard work. But then you can dive into others, and that's even more fun.
All right, we'll go for it.
I mean, then you go into it, like pour over. Pour over. When in doubt, I always say when in doubt, pour over. It's the way to go.
How's a pour over different from a drip?
So
They're mechanically the same thing.
they are, but they're not. Because so the way that most drip machines is like the drip is gonna be like in the middle, and it'll eventually get all your beans wet, obviously, but it's just like dripping more central. Versus like in a pour over, you have it. Most of them are cone shape, and you have your gooseneck kettle. And so you're pouring and you're making a circular motion. So you're wetting all the beans, and you are, like for the lack of better words, irritating them, and so you're extracting more of that natural flavors. Like you get that true flavor that the bean is supposed to have. Like, so like you get the notes. Like, so it's funny because I think for some people like coffee is just like it's this black
Stimulant.
that's burnt, and yeah, it has a
Burnt-
purpose.
burnt
You
and
know, like
stimulating.
a burnt stimulant, and even like I think like previous generations doesn't even like lighter roast because they're like, no, it's supposed to be this like black. But I'm like, there's
You
a
get more
beauty.
energy when it's darker.
Right, and
I don't
first
think
of
that
all,
is that true.
No, it's
not true.
It's
I didn't think
actually
so.
not. It's the biggest
you think so.
misconception. It does. Yeah, because you're like it tastes stronger.
The marketing thing.
Oh, 100%. But actually, lighter roasts have more caffeine in them because the more you roast a bean,
The more you
you lose some of that
Gotcha.
caffeine. So like a decaf is usually like very roasted. So yeah, no, your lighter roast one has more caffeine, and then two, you just like you taste the notes of the bean, which again I'm sure I sound very snobby, but like the bean, the bean grows in a fruit, and it varies so much in where it's grown, the way it's abstracted, the way they pull the bean from the fruit, whether they do it naturally, so like they'll put them in big pools of water, and they'll let the fruit just like sit there, like getting beat by the sun, and so it begins to
is
break
it like
down the
fermenting
fruit,
a little bit too?
kinda, and the water then gets some of that flavor from the fruit, which then is absorbed by the bean. So natural beans. If you see natural, I always get it. It just means that they didn't wash it off or break off the fruit. They let it sit there.
Gotcha.
So those beans will tend to taste a little more berry-like, more fresh, versus the other ones will have a little bit more of like that oaky, chocolatey flavor to them. So then there's just so many profiles. Again, who your farmer is, where you're from. Like I always say, African beans are probably my favorite. If I go to a coffee shop and if I'm shopping for beans, or like I'm trying to see if they offer different options, especially if they're from Ethiopia, you have my heart.
Okay.
Those are going to be your bright coffees. They'll have your berries, even tea likes. That some people are like, coffee's not supposed to be tea like, but It's just like that bright flavor versus your South Americans, which I do love a good South American coffee. Those are gonna be more like the chocolatey route, oaky, like woodsy one.
Mm. So what's your preferred? So you said Ethiopian. What's your
Ethiopian always.
preferred technique?
Oh, pour over,
Pour
hands
over.
down. Like I said, if you have the option, pour over is the way to go.
Where you at on espresso?
Oh, I love espresso. When I say recently, in the last 2 years, I would say 2 years, I got into it. I used to not be the biggest espresso fan. Again, also because some people just go for a dark roast espresso, and uh, when you do a light roast in an espresso and you know how to pour a shot of espresso well done, man, you don't need more than that. I do like a latte; it's fantastic, but uh, man,
Do
a
you like
good
just a shot
espresso.
of like
I
drink
like
straight?
a doppio, yeah, a doppio, which is like a double shot. And you just do that with some sparkling water, and like I said, a well poured shot with some good
Sparkling one, like
beans.
carbonated?
Just plain, it helps kind of wash your palate in between, and it just kind of adds. To
Gotcha.
the
So you're not
flavor.
mixing them; you're
No,
sipping them
no.
separately.
But if you mix them, it's also really good. So,
Well, there's this one drink called an eraser. I don't know if you drink alcohol or not, but
yes.
there's a drink called an eraser where you use Kahlua. It's Kahlua vodka and soda water. And it tastes like Coca-Cola. It's wild. It is a wild drink. They call it an eraser because you drink enough of them, it'll erase your mind. But I do like that one because I like White Russians.
Oh,
It's one of my favorite drinks. And it's instead of the milk, you're lengthening with soda water.
yeah.
And I recommend it. It's quite a good
I have to
drink.
give it a time.
If you like Kahlua.
I do love Kahlua.
Yeah.
I do like Kahlua.
But it's coffee, Coca-Cola, kind of chocolatey in nature, and you don't taste the vodka. Like it just goes away.
I'm here for it. There's this new trend, this like current trend going on where you do Coke, like a bottled Coke. You do like, I'd say probably 2 parts of that, a shot of espresso and some half and half. I know it sounds a little crazy. I tried it for the first time like 2 days ago, and I'm onto it. You know, it's good. Like the flavors mix really well. You can add as much Coke. Like, so my wife didn't like it because it was a little too much espresso forward, but it was fantastic.
Where are you at on coffee, Ben? Like
I love coffee. I definitely, I wouldn't go as far as dripping methods, brewing methods. Ultimately, I'm more about, hey, freshly ground beans, because I definitely heard something about mold in the major companies of ground beans sitting out in factories and stuff has a lot of mold that goes unchecked with regards to regulation. Hey Sue, so you like coffee so much. I thought I heard a rumor that you guys may be starting some sort of coffee business.
Ivy and I are starting it's a coffee business. I mean, the final goal, of course, is I call it a three-tier thing. The final, of course, being a coffee shop, a brick and mortar. But yeah, so we're starting kind of a little more mobile, not quite a coffee cart, but coffee table, I guess. Our plan is to set up shop outside of Mosaic on like a Sunday morning and then also move into like the farmer's market.
kind of like a food truck for coffee.
Yes, and then our next step will be to get an actual truck. And
Yeah, you start with a cart.
A
I mean,
cart,
I like the idea of you start like, let's see if this is
exactly,
scalable,
and that is
and
kind of
not
what
put
we're
all the
going.
investment into a full blown coffee shop and compete with Starbucks
Oh,
and Java Jacks and University Coffee, and just like see where the cart goes.
For
Carts
sure.
are cheaper than buildings.
Oh, most definitely. So we're going investment wise, like low investment. I don't have a buku's amount of money that I can just
Sure.
throw out. So yeah, we're starting low. We'll start farmers market outside of church, and then the plan is eventually then get an actual like little food truck. We would love to. We're trying to incorporate also a bar side to it, and we would love to like do like weddings and things like that, and events like Blueberry Festival and things, and then like I said, then the last step will be a brick and mortar.
So
Now-
are you gonna focus on like pour overs and espresso? Like you're gonna set it up for like one or two methods?
Yeah, so the way what we have right now, what we're gonna offer right now is the black coffee option as a pour over. So I do quick and dirty pour overs, not like as like time.
Consuming.
Because of course, like the reality is like people are trying to get somewhere.
Yeah,
so like
yeah. They
and
don't.
we don't have like a place to come and sit down. So yeah, so it's a quick and dirty pour over, and then a latte option. So OXO just developed a rapid brewer. Basically, you make concentrate coffee in like 2 minutes, and it kind of matches essentially kind of like a shot of espresso is what
Is
you
it?
make.
I mean, is it close to like a mocha pot, or is it something different? Like
It's
we use a mocha pot at home.
So it's more closer to an AeroPress,
Okay.
if you know what an
Yep.
AeroPress is. So yeah, it's so you put your beans and you compact them and it pushes water and you're pressing them. So
Yeah.
it does mimic also some of that pressed espresso process. So like I said, it gives you like a strong little concentrate, and then that is what we use to make lattes.
Have you ever used the larger manual presses where you're like get the big arm?
They look super cool, and I would love to.
Because
but
they're
again-
not terrible. I think they're around $300. What brand are those?
Yeah, so they're different ones. So they do make some like between like 150 to.
But you can
300.
pull like 9 bars manually with those things.
Yeah. So yeah, you'll pull a good shot. I've seen. I follow a lot of coffee influencers, and I've seen some of them.
Who's it?
pour them.
James? Who's the guy in England? James.
I don't know if I follow him, but there's a guy here called.
He was like an international coffee champion barista. His videos are really fun. Who's that? It's James something. He does a bunch of YouTube videos he's fun to
I'll have to
watch.
look him up.
because he's like so passionate about coffee.
Oh man,
Can we find that?
sounds
It's,
really cool.
James. Him. Yep. James Hoffman.
Oh, I will definitely look him up.
He like if you like coffee, he's up your alley.
Okay,
But he's also accessible to non-coffee. Like he's just fun to watch.
Yeah, he won the World Barista Championship in 2007.
I like that. So my favorite coffee shop and bar roaster, it's kind of like it's Onyx, and they're out of Arkansas, and they have incredible baristas. They're always like in the top places at the World Barista conference competitions and stuff. So they also have a lot of different
Yeah.
cool content out there. Morgan is probably my favorite. She's pretty incredible.
We think maybe we should have an episode where Jesus comes in and brews
Listen,
coffee for us.
I
And
would
Ooh, I
love-
like
shows us
that.
how it's done properly.
I would love to make a coffee. That's truly
Alcohol
where
or coffee?
both.
Both. Okay.
Both. I'm definitely like I said.
You like Irish coffee?
I do like a good Irish coffee. Yeah. That's really where my passion for and kind of why we started heading this way, venture into the business side of it. Being Hispanic, I grew around like cafecito and chisme, which is like gossip and coffee.
Like what?
Gossip and
Gossip. Oh, gossiping
yeah,
and
like
coffee.
family-
Gotcha. Talking and coffee. We know what the Bible says about gossip.
Right. Ooh. I know. But like family talk,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
It's more of like not true gossip. Oh, it is.
Community.
Yeah.
Communion in
So like
sense.
it is a big thing in Mexican culture where like I grew up, like my aunts will always get together around the table and there were always coffee. So for me, coffee is like thing that brings people together and just connects people in a beautiful way. There's something to me disarming about this warm drink. And it does energize you, but that it just like soothes you, warms you, and then brings people together. And I think that's my heart for this business, to create a space eventually that allows people to connect with each other and then us connecting with them. Like I said, it is just, I love coffee.
You love coffee.
Yeah.
It's good. We didn't grow up drinking coffee, so I'm kind of like I'm newer to it, and like I don't like to. So like I said, we use a mocha pot. My wife gets organic beans from Arkansas from a roaster up there. It's like a mix of Colombian and Arabica. Maybe I'll bring you some.
Yeah, you should.
See, like maybe these are okay.
What roaster is it? Do you know?
It's like a little local shop kind of roaster, and then we just use a mocha pot at home, and then I top it off with water, and I don't drink it straight, and then I add a little bit of milk. That's my.
So, Jesus, I apologize if you've already answered this. Are you guys going to do primarily just drinks? Are you going to do beans and grounds as well?
So a little bit of both is it?
Okay.
To one of this stuff. So One of my good friends, his name is Mondo. He was here at SFA, and that's how we met. He is a roaster. We've both always connected with coffee, and we're both very passionate about coffee. He moved off to Austin, and he's roasting right now, and that's kind of always been my dream. Even like when I thought about making a coffee shop, I roasting is not something that I'm super passionate about right now yet. I'm not opposed to it, but it's a monster of its own that I'm like, I can only take one monster at a time. Um, but at the end of the day, if you're serving coffee, like that is your product. So like,
Yeah.
you better have good product. So my good friend Mondo got into the roasting business, and that's something that he's passionate about. So it's really cool because it's allowed us to connect and take on this new project. So my goal is, those are the beans we use, and then also then he'll start bagging smaller bags. We won't have those right away ready to sell, but I think I also kind of want people to taste his coffee and then be like, hey, this is really good coffee. What do you use? And I'll be like, hey, well, let me show you. And then we would sell his bags. So
Go ahead and plug the
Oh
name.
man, his name is Mondo, and Cielo Roaster is, so you can look him up on Instagram.
Yeah, awesome.
His Instagram is still rough. He's still working on it to himself. But so it's cool. We're both kind of like starting new businesses.
Two sides. I mean, yeah, because it's roasting's a big process.
Yeah,
and brewing's a
and
big
it's
process.
its
There's a
own
reason
thing.
most coffee shops don't roast their own coffee.
Yeah, you'll find that I would say probably about 70% of coffee shops don't roast, because it requires equipment, and the process of it too is very intricate.
It's like most bars don't brew their own beer.
Exactly.
It's probably a much smaller ratio
Yeah.
of bars that do like breweries, but yeah, but they're becoming more popular.
They truly are.
Yeah.
So that is our plan.
So when is that come? When are you going to have that out?
So our official hard launch, I guess you can call it, it will be Sunday, November the 10th.
Okay, that's
we'll
coming
set up. Yeah, it's in a couple of weeks, or next weekend technically.
I will be out of town.
Dang.
I will
What's
not
the
be
name
able
of
to-
the venture?
So it's called Catalyst.
Okay.
We will set up outside of Mosaic probably at like 8:30. We'll be out there, and then we'll be there until like 10:45. So yeah.
So is your plan to like grow that into a big business and like retire from nursing?
So yeah, I joke around. It's my escape plan, maybe. But yeah, no, that I would love to. I love what I do. I love being a nurse, but I think it would be cool. And my wife will tell you this. I'll probably still keep a part-time nursing job, even like.
It's good to
as a
keep the
coffee
license for sure.
My license, my skills, and I do legitimately love the emergency room.
Yeah. What made you decide to get into nursing?
I started as a pre-med student, but then towards the end of my undergrad, I started doing some clinicals with a local doctor, and a lot of it was the Lord was opening my eyes, and I realized that my heart is not diagnosing. Like what the doctors do is fantastic. It's a great thing they do. Like they come in and they're able to use their diagnostics to tell you what's wrong with you, but you only see them for like maybe 10, 20 minutes.
It's not bedside care. It's
Exactly.
Not, yeah.
And my passion was that. Like I love people. Again, it kind of goes back to like why I love like coffee. Like I love connections with people. I'm very much wired to connect. So as a man, bedside is really what I want to do. I'm more of a hands-on guy. So that's kind of why I was like, well, I'm gonna finish this degree, I guess, because I'm already a semester away, but then I switched to nursing. So yeah, I love patient care.
Yeah. And you said you work ER. Mm-hmm. So what's that like?
I mean, it's wild and fun.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie too,
Okay.
so it's fun. It's unexpected. No 2 days look alike, and even like no hour looks the same too. Like so, like you have to be on your toes at any point. Something can come in through the doors.
So what kind of stuff do you see in Nacogdoches, Texas?
You'd be surprised. We still get guns and gun shootings and stabbings. A lot of car wrecks. If you want to go the trauma side, but then of course, like we do serve like like a rural community. So rural medicine is known for its you sometimes don't see people as often, but when you see them, it's because they've like waited too long. So like we'll see like people in like congestive heart failure, or like bad shape of diabetes and things like that that they just didn't keep in check because they don't go to the doctor, or they don't have even the resources of a big city. So you'll see people that you're like, man, you waited a little too long. So it's a lot of that, but it's fun. I
How
did.
do you handle that? Do you get reprimanding, like, oh, you should have
I
been
do
in
get a
here?
little sassy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, come on, like you know, especially like, oh, you know, this has been going on for a couple of days, and I'm like, no, it's not.
Like
I
that
said,
gangrene wasn't that took a
yeah,
little
so
while to get there.
that toe did not get black in 2 days. Like, and so it's one of those where I'm like, I tell you this because I legitimately love you and care about you as your nurse. Like you gotta do something different. So, and it's hard because you see people come back with the same thing, and you're like, come on, bro. But I mean, you gotta love them.
Yeah.
So there's that. But there's a fun to it, trauma too. That probably sounds terrible for me to say.
I get my sister was I think she was an ER surgeon, and then she's a military doctor. I'm probably saying everything wrong. But yeah, she I know she did ER work and then OR work, and she's, I believe, an OR surgeon now. But I believe she enjoyed it, although she got like about a few things like motorcycles, and she gets real antsy about motorcycles.
Oh, I hate motorcycles. And if I see you, especially if I see you without a helmet, I will have an internal
Oh yeah.
just rage.
Well, I rode from like 2009 to 2014, somewhere in there.
I'm glad you have an end year right there.
Yeah, well, I still have the bike. It's in the, but like I did lay it down once, and the thing is, it wasn't my fault.
But
That's the worst part about
That's
it.
the worst part.
That's the
about
worst
them.
part about it, is you need to be doing everything right
Oh.
and get killed.
You literally could be the best, like, motorcyclist, the best driver. You could be so cautious. But that's the thing. Like, you're fully exposed. You're going at speeds that are, like, high. No matter what, even if you're going like 30, 40, that's still higher than, normal. And then you're fully exposed to an impact from another giant, thing. And we're not even talking about 18-wheeler, but even like a car or a truck hits you, like,
pothole.
that's big. Oh, yeah. We once had, when I was traveling, we had a guy that, again, he did everything. He even wore a helmet. And he hit some debris. I think it was pine needles went off. And, like, again, he did nothing wrong. But it's like, man, it's dangerous.
Well, what happened to me was I was coming into a little East Texas town around a corner, and it had just lightly rained. So it didn't rain enough to wash the slick off the road. So you have that, like, silky, slippery state. And I was just coming into town, and then I woke up on the side of the road. And so I know I wasn't going too fast on the corner because I ended up inside the corner.
Yeah.
So I slipped and went inside, and then all of a sudden the guy who was behind me, like, I'm waking up and the guy's behind me. He's like, "Oh, you just had an accident." Like, I'm like, so I did have a helmet. I always wore full gear. I got trained. My uncle taught me how to ride, and he rode for 50 years.
Yeah.
Same uncle with the Canadian wife. He rode for 50 years. BMW riders get into less accidents for some reason. I don't know.
I guess because you pay a lot more for them, maybe?
No, you pay a lot for Harleys. Harleys are expensive. 35 grand.
Legitimately don't know anything about them. I hate them.
BMWs can get expensive too. But I think there's a very strong safety culture with BMW riders. They wear full gear. They wear jackets. Never wear shoes that can slip off.
Good.
So they got to lace up or zip up. So that's the kind of rider that I came from. But I did crack and take the side of my helmet and take the screen off. And if I had not been wearing a helmet, my jaw would have at least been broken.
Oh, 100%. I did some travel nursing, and I got to go to a lot of awesome hospitals, but the best one, and I was there probably for the longest, is Bentop in Houston. So it's a county hospital down there. So, I mean, as you can imagine, they're a level 1 trauma hospital. And, I mean, we saw some, like, terrible, terrible things, like, from people like that, and people that wouldn't wear helmets. I've seen, like, full legs degloved, so, like, the skin is completely
We went to
off.
Lowe's the other day, and there was a guy with a Triumph, and he had, like, short shorts on. He had a helmet, but he had short shorts on.
Yeah,
I'm like,
and
that's not going to cut it.
Nope. It's not
Ooh,
like,
road rash is...
Yeah. Oh,
It's amazing how much leather will protect you.
Oh, 100%.
Let the cow get the skin burned.
I've seen head to toe, like, road rash where it's at the top layer and it hurts, and I'm like, I'm sorry, buddy.
And that's part of the reason I mean, I have enough kids now to like, it's just not worth, like, maybe when I'm older and it's like, I can die now.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But there's a certain exhilaration to them. Like,
No.
the reason you like it is
I
because
can
you're
see it.
very free. You can smell everything. You can feel everything. You have the wind. You get to lean over. There's so much to it that is exhilarating. I mean, you said you're an adrenaline junkie.
No, and I do get it.
But when you've seen the level of
Yeah.
trauma that can be caused by motorcycles, when you're doing every single thing right, like, I totally get it.
Yeah, no, I think
You
that's
know.
the biggest thing. But I do get it. Like I said, I'm not totally dismissive of it.
You're not, let's not
I'm
outlaw
like, I'm
outlaw
not
them.
gonna, not outlaw them, but I'm like, you're playing with fire.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the wildest kind of thing you've seen?
Yeah, people love asking that.
I mean, it's the question to ask when
Of
someone
course,
says they're in ER.
100%. I would say, I mean, I talk about a degloved leg. We had in Houston a leg that was completely degloved, and that.
So when you
person-
say degloved,
so basically, the skin is gone, like peeled back, kind
put
of.
an explicit warning on this.
Yeah. And so this person was still like awake. This person was also like intoxicated, and they were still able to bend at the knee joint, but it was literally like you can literally see bone, muscle, and tissue and joints. So like they were moving, and we're like, stop moving it. But I mean, not to sound terrible, but it literally looked like a turkey leg. So like, because you're literally seeing muscle and bone bending at the joint. And so I would
Did he
say
have, was that a motorcycle accident? Yeah. Did he have, was it alcohol intoxication or was it other intoxication?
I'm not, especially like in a big ER like that, we're not there long enough to see sometimes some of that, like in big trauma situations like that, you're taking them to the operation room pretty fast. So I wasn't there long enough to even know if this person lived or anything. But I mean, yeah, she appeared. That's legally, that's what I can say. She appeared.
Okay, so it was a girl,
Yeah.
female biker,
Yes, she appeared intoxicated,
allegedly.
allegedly.
There you go.
Again,
Well, we're not giving names.
definitely.
Yeah,
that would be big.
That would be a HIPAA violation.
That'd be, and legitimately, I don't even know her name, even if
Yeah.
I didn't want.
So how does that seeing that kind of stuff affect you? Do you get numb to it at a certain point?
You do get numb to it. You get a certain level of numbness. I would say, and my wife could tell you this, I'm really good at compartmentalizing. You have to. You don't have the room to break down. Probably the prime example of this. And I mean, of course, I won't say names, but they're okay with me talking about it. But I have this coworker when I started as a new grad, and you know the beauty and the downside of working in a small town, as you know, people. And he at this point worked as a paramedic, and he found out his son was dead because he rolled into the accident where his son was. So that kind of became my unspoken fear when I started working. I was like, I'm terrified that I'm going to see roll in somebody that I know. So I always like put it in the back of the head, like, oh, that's terrifying. And it happened. A good friend of ours rolled in, and I had to be this friend's nurse. And I didn't even realize that this was my friend. Because, you know, people come in different shape, you know. Until somebody else pointed out and said, hey, that is your friend. And at that point, you have two options. You either break down and just like get paralyzed, or you compartmentalize it, put it in the back of your head, and you move forward and you do the best that you can do for your friend. You know, like you are a big part of, like, especially at that point, like a life. So it's like you either, like I said, break down and leave, or you do the best you can. And I think that was like, that's what I chose. So it was me and a coworker that knew this friend. So he was a lot younger than me, this coworker, so he kind of starts like choking up, and I looked at him, and when I was telling him this, I truly was also speaking to myself, and I said, "Listen, man, like you either like suck it up and you stay in this room and you do the best thing you can do for our friend, or you walk away from this room. Like I don't want to see you in here. Like if you can't,
Yeah.
like if you can't, like, and that's a reality, not being cold, but it's like our friend's life is at stake, and if we don't do our best, like
Yeah, if you screw up
yeah,
because
like
you're breaking down, it's better to let someone
so
else come
then
in
they
and
just
take
step
over.
in. Yeah, so it was one of those where it's like, okay, I put it in the back of my head, and I did everything I could. There would be like pauses, like when my friend was getting a CAT scan, that I would just sit there, and then like tears will start rolling out, and I was like, man, I can't have to shut it to the back of my head. You know, we live in a small town, so of course, like my wife is calling me, like, because she had heard about the accident, and I said, hey, I can't talk. I'm in the bed. I mean, she knew what I was doing, and she knew who I was taking care of at that point. By that point, I didn't say anything, but again, small town, everybody knew this. So I have like people texting me, and I have to ignore that, and then so you put it deep in the back of your mind, and I've gotten so good at it that it took me a little bit to, like, I got home and I was just kind of numb, and it took me like probably about like an hour to just kind of sit there, and then it finally, like, you go to the back of your mind, open that box, and let it all out. So I would say that's probably the hardest part of it.
Yeah. Do you carry that compartmentalization home with you? Like,
I try
can it
not
like
to.
creep into your family life?
I try not to, but I mean, also at the flip side of it, like my wife is one of my safe spaces. So, Lacey's truly incredible at hearing me out, knowing me. She knows when I'm just bottling things, so
Yeah, that's
she's
a
good
blessing.
at, like, yeah. So that, and like my best friend Josh, who is also a nurse, he knows too. So it's having those safe spaces to then open up that box, let it out, and be like, this was hard, this sucked, and then be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Then
No,
you shed it.
having someone you can talk to, especially if it's your significant other, like a lot of men don't have that.
Yeah,
And like I know, like with my wife, like there's really nothing I can't talk to her about.
yeah,
Like can't think of a subject we haven't talked about.
yeah. No, truly,
So that's like a massive blessing.
truly.
So so as a Christian, do you believe in miraculous healing?
Yeah.
Do you like where does that fall into
No,
the ER
I
with you?
for sure believe in miracles. It's hard, I think, because I sometimes know the gravity of something, but at the flip side, it makes me, I feel like, appreciate a miracle more, because I also know the gravity of what happened when it did get healed. But it is kind of like, I'm like, I understand the heaviness of this diagnosis, and I understand like how hard it is for you to come back from it.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, no, I mean, I wholeheartedly believed in miracles and healing.
Have you seen any?
I personally have been healed from, it sounds silly, and it's better, like from GERD. I really,
Okay.
especially when I started night shift, I really struggled with really bad
GERD
reflux.
sucks.
It's terrible.
I've had like when we filmed a movie in 2021 and like I was working 18 hours a day for like 40 days straight and I had stomach issues after that. And
Literally.
it wasn't fun.
It was the worst, and it just, yeah. And I felt the Lord telling me to ask Lauren to pray for me, and I went up to Lauren and I said, "Hey, this is really random, but can you pray
Lauren
for
Eggers, so the pastor's wife.
And she prayed for me, and I used to have to pop. I had Nexium ready to go, and that, but and I stopped, and it hasn't come back, and it's not like I've changed my habits. I need to probably get better habits, eating better, but
Don't we all?
all right. But
In today's
I really
society.
I haven't taken any medications for it. So that is my first hand experience. As far as like on the job, no, I haven't really experienced any healing at work. I think there's a scary aspect of like trying to pray for somebody for healing at
Oh,
work,
sure.
because I don't want somebody to be like, okay, cool,
Yeah,
but
this is
are
a
you
hospital,
not
not
gonna treat me like
Yeah.
because you did? So that is always like, it's cool when like the opportunity does have risen.
Well, I think that would be like an entirely different ministry because we know, people get harmed, most people don't get healed, and like whatever causes that healing to happen. I personally have not witnessed like healing either, like in a direct sense like that. So yeah, when you're a nurse, in a hospital. Like you have a job to do there. And in a lot of ways, like I do feel like if you were to just start praying over everybody, you would be making God look really bad.
Yeah,
Because
I can see that.
even if like you did get one healing, the rest
Sure.
of them would be like, you're not making God look good, and you're not making the profession look good either.
Yeah, for sure. I think especially like if you're not, then of course then if you stop doing your work because you're like, yeah, you're healed. You can go ahead and check out of the ER. But I do find that the times where I have prayed, and I haven't prayed for healing over somebody at work, but when you do have that connection with a patient, and I have prayed for somebody, like it does do something to where
Sure.
it like takes.
And
the
I can see like
edge off.
if they are Christian and you recognize them as something you
Yeah.
talk about and they ask you to pray, I'm sure you wouldn't hesitate.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So is that a belief that you came to like over time, or something that came suddenly? Like, I mean, because you talked about going from 2017, right? You
2009.
started going to 2009. You started going to Grace. Yeah. And like, how has your walk been like from there? Like, is it something that you've gradually moved into, or were you like all in from the beginning?
I was all in at first, and then I was a college student, so I was what I like to call a Sunday believer.
Okay.
Pretty early on, I got involved with drinking and partying. So church was something I did on Sundays, and that was great. But then I would party. I drank a lot, and I struggled with a lot of that and partying and just seeking acceptance. And then, ironically, I started leading youth, and it was around the time when I was about to start nursing school, where there's a couple of big things that the Lord, at that point I didn't know the Lord was speaking. But the summer before I started nursing school, I was like, I gotta get my life together. Like something has to change because I'm partying all the time, and this God thing is cool, but I'm like, I either have to go all in or all out, and I need to get better habits. So I think like that kind of started steering something in my heart, and then went to church, and I heard a sermon where the pastor said, "Hey, how long can you go without food without thinking about it?" And I'm like, reality, like maybe an hour and a half, and then I need a snack. And then he said, "How long can you go without water, without thinking about it?" And I was like, maybe like 2-3 hours. And then he said, "How long can you go without God, without thinking about Him?" And that question, like,
That's a good question.
rocked me to a core. Like, it like shook me internally. And because at that point, the reality, the true answer was weeks. Like, if I don't go to church, weeks.
And a lot of Christians aren't thinking about God in church either.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, gosh. So I prayed. I was like, God, would you give me a hunger for you? And I would say that's probably one of the loudest, like, fastest prayers that he has answered, because, man, it truly, I would say, like, it was a kairos moment. It changed, like, the trajectory of my life. That summer, I'd been wanting and praying for a mentor. And again, my wife being the incredible woman that she was, and at this point, she was just my best friend. She connected me with Garth, and that truly also changed my life. Again, it goes into that. He sat me down. It was the first day of nursing school. I had a lunch break. I met with him at the barbecue house, and he started telling me things about me that, like, I didn't believe were real. That sounded too good to be true. And he said, God speaks. And I was like, it makes sense. And I was like, I want that to be true. And he was like, he's talking to you if you want to listen. And I said, I want to. And I remember towards the end of our conversation, and it's funny because I look back and I'm like, oh, yeah, Jesus, you don't know. He asked me, he was like, what do you want out of this? What do you want out of this relationship? And young Jesus was like, I don't know, that you hold me accountable and that I read my Bible. And he just had that Garth smile with those intense eyes. And he just said, I'm going to do so much more than that. He said, I'm going to show you what it is to walk the kingdom. And man, thinking about it kind of makes me tear up. and it just shook me. I was like, man, nobody says things like that.
Mm.
And like, you clearly living a life that I'm not, and I want that.
Yeah. No, Garth's a pretty amazing guy. I've been, I mean, I will say, like, I've been a Christian my whole life. Like, people, I'm a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
And, the saying with pastor kids tends to be that, like, any Christian who was raised in the church, you got saved when you were a teenager sometime. And honestly, like, I've never not believed in God.
Yeah.
Never not believed in Jesus. Yeah, I got baptized when I was 7 and 12 or whenever. And you said the sinner's prayer around 12. But, like, it's always been there.
Yeah.
And so I've known a lot of Christians. And Garth is pretty darn high up there on the people that I've known as far as, like, his diligency and his walk and, like, his outward display of what a Christian should be.
For
Like,
sure.
super high on that list.
Definitely. He knows.
Not
He
to
has
puff Garth up
relationship.
too much if he's
I
listening.
mean,
He's been on the podcast a couple times.
Yes,
so.
I did. I did see a couple. Yeah, I mean, I'll hype that man up all day, every day. I think his life shows what it looks like to know Jesus, and maybe I'm biased. I don't know. Again, maybe I'm a super fan, but if you look at the way he does life, the way he interacts with people, like, you don't just know about Jesus, like, Jesus, and you don't see that very often. You see a lot of, especially in the Bible Belt, you see a lot of people that know a lot about him, know a lot about God, they know a lot about their Bible, and I mean, that's great. You can you can speak with tongues of angels, but if there's not true, like, core love, and you see that, like, you see
talking head knowledge versus heart knowledge,
and you see that, and you say that's something that I admire, and then it's been cool because then I've gone to meet even more people like that.
Yeah.
But
so what made you decide to get into leadership? I mean, because you lead. I know you're leading men's prayer, men's group right now, small group type
and then
thing.
we lead. My wife and I lead a small group. Sometimes, honestly, we're just very involved. Our relationship started as youth leaders in Grace.
Okay.
I say relationship. We're literally, legitimately, she was my best friend, but that's how we got to know each other. We're big believers of, like, if there's an issue with something, don't just talk about it. Don't just, complain about it. Like, do something about it. And not that we had a problem. We went to an incredible, awesome community group, and they actually invited us to start leading with them. But it's to us, it's like whenever people are like, "Oh, there's this wrong," then I'm like, "Okay, then do something about it." And that's kind of like our heart behind it. We want to step in and do things that we see and we long for. So that's kind of how we started leading small group. We have a young adult small group and our young families.
Mm-hmm.
And then we like to be involved. And neither of us are very content with just, like, sitting in the back and just taking it in. We like to partake in the dinner. We like to bring something to the table and then take something as
It's
well.
like the community thing you were talking about earlier, coffee, nursing, where it's like you're connecting with other people.
My wife is wired like a shepherd in the most beautiful way. So she's so passionate about caring for people, loving on people. And I would say, like, that is also a big drive for us. We're pretty involved with youth ministry back again. We started in youth and we're back in youth. And we love those connections. We love to love on people and empower people.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of our heart for being involved and step into a leadership role.
So what's your, like, philosophy as a Christian? Like, what do you, like, as a Christian? I feel like everyone's pretty passionate about something. Like, Garth is very heavy on prayer. I tend to be very heavy on, like, I'm a little Old Testament. I'm a little rules oriented, because Jesus said, we don't know what sin is without knowing the law. Sin is transgression of the laws. And I think those things are super important. What's your, like, your perspective?
Man, I would say, to me, identity is the biggest thing. I thrive and I have a big heart for identity. I always say we have a big identity crisis.
How do you mean, like,
people don't know who they are, who God says they are. So then they mask it or they fill it with what the world says about them, what they say about themselves. So they live this life, like, being enslaved to voices of even, like, what people say about them, like, you're not good enough or stuff, or even taking pseudo identities, like which they come off as real things, like being a husband, being a nurse, being a church nurse, being whatever. But then you take that on as your identity. So then when something goes wrong or gets taken from you, like you're rocked to a core.
Mm.
You have a bad day at work, like it like rocks you to a core to where you're like, I don't know who I am, or like like it hits you deep. But that's because you didn't know who you were. Like the base, the foundational of your identity has to be that you are a son of Yahweh and He loves you so much. You look at Jesus before He started His job, His ministry. Like the first thing that He did was an encounter with the Father, and He said, like, you are my beloved Son in whom I'm fully pleased. Like, and that is how then he worked out of that place, but that was his foundation. And I think that's where so many people don't work out of that. We work towards that. So many people are like, well, I'm trying to get to that point where I'm trying to make the Father proud of me. But it's like, no, like He's already proud of you. And it doesn't mean you get to slack and do whatever you want, of course, but
Yeah.
so many people don't live by that. They don't know what the Father says about them. Like personally says about them. And again, it's what I call an identity crisis, because you don't know what He says about you. So how are you expected to walk in the manner that He wants you to walk? Yes, you can do good things and walk around eggshells and hope to make it to heaven. But man, there's so much more than that. And He wants you to live a more powerful life.
So how do you get to that stage? Like,
Oh, connection with Him. The way Jesus, again, we go back to how did Jesus do it? There's a connection that He had with Him. Every time you saw Him going off to pray, and it's you would see like it's tying that connection back. So I am a big part of the Garth School of not really, doesn't have a school, but you know what I mean. Like, so I mean,
Garth
prayer,
University.
right? Garth School of Ministry.
Yeah.
But a lot of that, like spending that time with Him, meditating, like pressing into His voice and like hearing His voice. The reality of like His voice is very much there.
So in practice, like, what is that? Like what is your prayer?
Yeah.
Like in practice, what does that look
For
like?
sure. The reality is silencing everything. And
So shut your phone off, all notifications, your computer.
and then having just like true legitimate quiet time, as cheesy as that sounds. Like,
Well,
a
you'd mentioned
journal.
before, like you do it like with coffee. Like you're making coffee and you're
Coffee, like you said,
talking to
doing
God.
something, even doing something like that you like understanding that sometimes I think we tend to like make it religious, that it has to be this like quiet time and light candles. And I
very
do love
monk-like.
I love a good candle, and I always joke around and say the
Well,
Holy
you're
Spirit.
Catholic. I mean, so
Exactly.
yeah.
Going back to my roots, I always say Holy Spirit is present when a candle gets lit. But the reality that He's so involved in things. So for me, coffee even has like a worship side of things, for lack of better words, where it's like just the connection of just like even making a pour over or pulling a good shot, and then just like sitting back, like shutting everything off, even mentally, and then just like saying like, I'm here, God. And then truly, for like in a practical sense, like hearing His voice. The example that I always say when I'm telling people about it or trying to teach somebody is that He's been talking to you your whole life. You just don't know His voice or don't recognize it. It's like you and I, we've been going to church probably for a while, and
Yeah.
you didn't know.
We've hardly interacted.
You've heard my voice, but you didn't know that that was my voice. So it's a noise in the background. But then once you and I begin to interact more and more, we can now be in church, and you can not see me, but hear me in the background. You're like, oh, that's Jesus back there. It's the same. The more we interact and press into that voice, the more we know to listen to it, and the more recognizable it is. So truly, legitimately silencing everything and hearing like the thoughts that come in your head. And then the beauty of it is that we can separate those thoughts. Like, okay, this is a thought that's telling me I still haven't paid the bill, or I don't have enough money.
Yeah,
I'm going to say
the
that's
survival
not,
anxiety.
I'm going to say that's not from the Lord. then as you sit there, you just hear it, and it starts out with something simple. We think or we want this like crazy big revelation. And he sometimes that does, but sometimes it's just something as simple as I love you.
Hmm.
I'm here for you. I call it the deafening whisper. It's so subtle, so gentle, and you're like, oh. That at first you're like, I don't believe it, or I made it up myself. But it's kind of funny because I would dare to say, you're not really that nice to yourself internally. And it's those thoughts that are too good to be true that, again, then the enemy's very quick to speak to you internally. And again, I wish it was a, this is me, Satan. But it's not. It's masking your own voice of like, oh, I just made that up. And then you just dismissed everything. But hearing those thoughts, listening to those thoughts, and believing those thoughts, even if in your core you don't believe that you are, he's fully pleased in you. Even if like everything in you tells you no, there's no way that he could be fully pleased in me. I just looked at porn. I just went off on my daughter. Like everything in you tells you I'm not. Like there's no reason why you should be fully pleased in me. But he says, but I am. That is how you begin then practically to like hear his voice, and the more you hear it, the more comfortable you are with it, the more you start to believe it. And then that's where, again, going back to it, that's how you begin to then like weave your identity. Like, oh, this is what the Father says about me. Like, so like when you look in the mirror and you hear, man, you're fat, you're ugly. And then, but you know, and you've had encounters with him that tells you, you're my beautiful masterpiece and you're perfect. You're like, oh, it's makes silencing those negative voices a little more doable, I guess. If that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, and then wrapping like back to like the identity thing, like you're not your actions, you're not your prior actions, you're not your job, you're not your career. And like I'm highly failure averse. Like we were kind of raised where like failure is not an option kind of thing. So like failure is hard for me. I mean, and it's highly encumbering in getting projects off the ground and doing them. And like there's one thing exercise with this podcast is to just learn to fail.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
if we do a poor one, if we whatever, and we haven't done many poor ones, and you scrap them and you move on. But it's just about like becoming better. You're only as good as your next set of actions to some extent. Sure. But still, you're not your actions, and we are individuals created by God.
Yeah.
What would you say, like to let's say an atheist or anyone who does not believe it thinks this is all bullshit? Like what would you say when it comes to like hearing God's voice and like finding that quiet space? And
there's another analogy that I love to use. I think we can talk a lot about it, but it's like if you went to a food court, right, and you're really hungry, and you know lunch was coming, so in your head you're like, I'm gonna get that slice from Sabara. I'm gonna go get a pizza, and that's what I'm gonna get. And you're in it, you're minded, you're like, that's what I'm gonna eat come lunchtime. And you walk into the food court, and you're like, I'm ready. That's where I'm gonna walk. And on your way there, you're met by the very loud, very fun guy from that Asian restaurant, and says, "Here, try this." And you're like, come on. And he said, no, come on, try it. And you taste it, and because you're hungry, it tastes like the best, like teriyaki chicken ever. And it makes you change the course of your lunch. You're like, I don't want pizza. And you end up ordering like a $10 like little 2-meat entree because you tasted that chicken. So I would say, like, I know it doesn't sound practical, but I would say, like, you have to experience it. But that's also where I feel like it's our responsibility as Christians. Like, if somebody's not encountering the presence of the Lord and the love of the Lord through you, like, it doesn't matter if you tell somebody, hey, John 3:16, like, cool beans. Those are just loud voices.
Yeah, there's no fruit.
Like, awesome, man. Thank you. Yeah, that's a nice little passage. But if they're not experiencing the love and the presence of Jesus through you, then I mean, like, man, shut up and go somewhere else. To honestly, at least I would hope that it's not about what I would say to that atheist. Is more like what they're experiencing through me. And I'm not perfect and I'm messy, but if they can see that through my mess, like, like Jesus is there and he fills the gap and they experience love, then I would say that. And I would say, hey, just come and sit in a quiet space with me and give it a go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, coffee shop's name?
Catalyst.
Catalyst, and that
Yeah.
opens November 10th.
November 10th, 8:38ish to like 10:45.
At Mosaic.
I'm Mosaic in the parking lot. We'll set up. You'll see us on a table with a tent. Come check us out.
Awesome. Will do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right.